Welcome to Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto, the podcast dedicated to focusing on the truth that is always evolving within us and around us, where we explore the potentiality of truth as a highly esteemed value at a time in history when most people have more on their plates than any one human should. If you're new to me, full expression is my jam. Some words people have used to describe me range from speaker, trainer, coach, healer, writer, spiritual advisor, teacher, podcaster, and someone even called me their soul Sherpa once. I'm less concerned with titles or labels and more interested in results, change, and creating a world we want to, can, and are proud to live in. A kinder, gentler, more curious, collaborative, reverent world where people respect each other's backgrounds, experiences, and truths. They trust in themselves, in life, and recognize that we need each other. And they know how to cultivate healthy relationships to true power, not the very unhealthy kind of power our current culture is predicated upon. Speaking of our culture, there's a lot of noise and ignorance in our current culture, and this show aims to cut through that by exploring the truths of a diverse range of incredible voices. From authors, artists, creatives, and educators to activists, speakers, and those in various scientific and esoteric fields, our guests hail from cultures and countries all over the world. We post a new interview every Monday, and if you want to keep up with the show notes and quotes from our guests, you can follow me on Instagram at Elizabeth D'Alto. You can expect a wide range of topics when you tune into this show. Everything from health, communication, money, success, parenting, desire, sex, love, and spirituality, to making pivots and transitions in life, and topics related to psychology, storytelling, gender and race issues, emotional intelligence, activism, advocacy, and much more. A few disclaimers. No episode of the show is meant for everyone, and every episode is meant for whoever needs it on the right day at the right time. Not all guest views will reflect my own, and that's intentional. We don't learn, grow, heal, or improve by staying in our comfortable bubbles with all of our people who look, think, or live exactly how we do. If you love what you hear and find it useful and inspiring, the best way to show your appreciation is to share the episode, subscribe to the show, and leave us a rating and review wherever you listen in from. Thank you so much for being here with me. Here we go. Welcome to episode number 266 of Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto. I am your host, Elizabeth D'Alto, and this interview today with Rebekah Borucki is on the raw and messy side, but I want to let you know that that's by design. Bex is a really close friend of mine, and she is one of my learning and processing buddies around topics relating to dismantling systems of oppression in every area of our lives. So her big truth was that we have so far to go in our evolution to even be decent. And when she says we, she's obviously talking about the collective we, but even all of us on an individual level, we just have so much work to do, y'all. And so from there, we talked about all the things we're learning, implementing, and integrating as we strive to be more decent human beings. This isn't really a teaching episode, as we're both deeply in student mode on these topics and will be for life. But we wanted to demonstrate how we're learning, how we're handling things, how we are surrounding ourselves with people who are also doing this work, and how we're navigating interacting with people who aren't. So we talked about whiteness, privilege, cultural appropriation, fetishization, racism, ableism, self-care, how hard it is, again, to interact with people we've been close with who aren't doing their work to learn, unpack, speak up, and be allies. And we also got into just how complex all of this is, how we're navigating that while we're learning, staying open, and staying flexible through all of this. So I love this woman. This is definitely one to share with loved ones and use as a conversation tool to take a look at these topics in your own spaces. So again, this is episode number 266. We listed a lot of things in the show notes, a lot of resources and stuff. So if you want to check that out, go to untameyourself.com/TT-266. Again, that's untameyourself.com/T as in truth, T as in telling -266. Now for the show. Everyone, this is going to be a great episode, and here's why. And I need to give some upfront, not warnings, but some disclaimers. So this is my dear friend, Rebekah Borucki, aka Bex. She's been on the podcast before. And why I'm excited to have Bex here is she's one of my processing learning, educating ourselves, unpacking buddies as we like really strive to do better in all of these areas. Like one of the things Bex and I have in common is we used to be in fitness. And then we now realize how oppressive so much of the message. And listen, we're going to giggle, not because we think the things are funny, but because if we don't find the humor in the thing, I don't know that we would make it out. I don't know what we would do if we couldn't be like, what the hell was I thinking?
Yeah, it's definitely a nervous, embarrassed.
It's like when you laugh at a funeral because you actually don't know how to feel. It's a confused laughter. But, and I'm like, damn, how do we not, like, it's once you see something and then you get it and you're like, or at least get it kind of, you're like, how did we not know that? But, so we are really going to explore, this might be uncomfortable for some people. It might be uncomfortable for us. It might not be. But the disclaimer / warning that I want to give is neither one of us are like body positivity experts. We're not therapists. We're not trained psychotherapists. You know, we're coaches. We're healers. Bex is a trained doula. She's been a yoga instructor. I've been a personal trainer. You know, we have lots of trainings and lots of knowledge around many things, but like the things that we're going to be talking about a lot today, we are not experts. We're not race educators. You know, we'll talk about body image stuff. We're not experts in the psychology of that either. And so I want to give that warning. So, you know, no one has the impression that like we're here to teach you anything. What we're here to do is allow you to listen to our processes, like the things that we talk about privately all the time. We're going to talk about some of that here so you can see how the unpacking actually happens if you're a person who's also doing that. Nor are we saying that the way we're doing it is right or best or great, but, you know, we're here and we're doing it and hopefully encouraging other people to do it, you know, in your own way, or maybe if something we say helps you find some clarity, you know, who knows, but it's going to be a clunky conversation. I actually could have just said that.
It's, you know, it's funny. Right before we started and I was in a rush to get ready because I was late. I was like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot that this was happening. Right before we got started, I was thinking about how I've been doing this for a really long time. And it's always been my practice to share my process and to share when I'm going through something and to really be honest about it. But what I have never considered up until this point is the impact of me being wrong or clunky in my process.
Yeah.
I thought that I was really in service by just sharing all the messiness and just really being completely honest, like no holds barred, no secrets. I just want to tell you what I'm going through. But I didn't appreciate how impactful and how possibly dangerous and harmful that could be for women. And that's what I'm working on now and sharing the process.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. So I'm going to bookmark that because I want to just, I feel like I can't get going until I ask the first question I always ask, which is what's a truth that's having a big impact on your life right now? And I know there's a lot, so just like pick one.
Well, I was just watching Wendy Williams because that's sometimes how I cure my writer's block and unwind during the day. I watch a clip of Wendy Williams. And I was just hearing her give her opinions about celebrity romances and, you know, just her opinions about whatever's going on in the world. And I was thinking how backwards people are, or how we act so counter to what's good for us all the time. How bad our ideas are about what is real and true and kind. How messed up our views are about gender, about race. Oh my gosh, we have so far to go. And it for a moment, it made me feel super hopeless. Like we're just so, this is going to be a controversial one, but we are so fundamentally broken in the way we operate.
Because the systems are broken. Everywhere we learn everything.
But we make the systems. Yeah. But we made the systems.
Right. And like, again, like we inherited broken systems and therefore we inherit the brokenness, I feel like. Before we started, so Bex and I were catching up before I hit record, and she said this thing, and I'm like, damn it, I'm just going to hit record because we're already coming out hot, and it should just be on the interview. And the way you had articulated it, I loved, which was, we have so far to go in our evolution to even be decent.
Yes. Human beings are not decent. And it's interesting because all of the talks that we've been having lately, or all the talks I've been having lately with women of color surrounding race, is that in asking for allyship, we're really just asking for people to be decent. Just be a decent human being. It's really all it takes. I mean, get some education, definitely. Like, know the right words, like know the right way to go about things, know how to have a conversation around race, but start off by just wanting to be decent and not expecting a reward for it. Like, this is base level. This is where we should be starting out. Base level humanity here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't know how to do that.
It's so interesting. Nope. This is one of the things that's been so interesting to me about dating, because I feel like I'm really getting to meet people outside of my bubble and really see how people are conditioned. And what's cool about LA is that most people are not native. And so I'm meeting people who were literally raised in other countries, who were raised in other states, and to kind of notice what is consistent across the board. Misogyny, patriarchy, that shit is so real. And then also racism, and all the other isms, the ableism, all the other things. There's this thing going on in Southern California right now. I don't know if it's a national thing, but in Southern California, like where I live in Malibu, they outlawed plastic utensils.
Oh yeah, and that's bad for people who struggle with certain disabilities.
Yeah, plastic straws, which I obviously to me never had crossed my mind. I'm over here, I'm getting into stand up. I'm not trying to be like a crass comedian, but I wrote down this one thing. I was like, this is so gross. I'm just going to tell you because I started it. I'm like, drinking a smoothie from a cardboard straw halfway through is like sucking a half-hard dick.
Yes.
I don't know that I ever need to say that anywhere again. But
no, I like it.
It's the thought that came to my mind. It's all mushy, gummy.
Yeah. Yeah. And for people who have certain disabilities, it's a choking hazard. Super dangerous. And like, what people don't think about these things. And so, this is the thing. So to get to decency, we have to learn to consider all kinds of things. So many of us with a variety of privileges have never considered because it doesn't affect us. I think the first thing that we have to consider when having these hard conversations is how important it is to not have a really strong opinion about anything.
Yeah.
Because you can't know all the information. So, and the plastic straw thing is classic. I mean, that's such a good one because everyone thinks plastic is bad right off the bat. Like, we have too much plastic is bad. And for many people, like, it's something that they absolutely need. Yeah. And it's never been part of the conversation until very recently. I mean, the big conversation. Yeah.
It's, again, just all these things. So I like what you said there. And it's, we're all going to have opinions. Again, like, to keep it really classy again, there's one of my favorite Salt and Pepper songs of all time, None of Your Business. She's like, opinions are like assholes and everybody's got one. I love that. But be flexible. Just be flexible. Be willing to be wrong. And learn stuff.
Just say, just know that your opinion is an opinion and not a fact.
Yes.
That's what people struggle with. It's like they think that getting more information in support of their opinion somehow turns it into a fact. An opinion is an opinion. A fact is a fact. One can never be the other.
For real. It's wild. And people are so much more attached. And a lot of, again, this is even generalization, but I think what makes it challenging is how much more attached people are to being right than to being decent.
100%. We could end it there because that's 100% what is wrong with people. Like, it really is. Because it is more important for people to be right, to have fans, to be part of a club, than to be decent, and definitely to stand alone and be decent. There are very, very few people in the world who are standing alone in order to be decent.
Right.
Because even people who are like joining all the right movements, you know, are still joining a club. They still need that constant support and affirmation to tell them that they're right. So.
And I mean, I think in some contexts, we need groups. We need to be able, because otherwise we're not going to see our stuff. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I know one of the things that we really wanted to talk about here was some of the things we see now. I know she's already cringing.
I thought you were going to talk about fitness, and I'm scared.
I am. Yeah. It's interesting. I've had some shifts around this even just in the last week as this conversation's been coming. We've rescheduled, for those of you listening, we've rescheduled this chat like twice. It's because it's not even that it feels heavy. It's just like complex and clunky. Again, and
it keeps evolving. And every time we reschedule, I'm so happy we rescheduled because I just saw the Mr. Rogers documentary, and I have so much more to say. Or I just had this other experience, and I have so much more to say.
Yeah.
So,
So, you know, Bex and I both used to be in fitness. You know, one of my taglines was like, get a slamming hot body. And, you know, when Facebook does this thing where they pop up your memories, and I see some of the shit that I used to write on the internet, and I'm just like, I'm so sorry, everyone. I'm so sorry.
It's interesting because I've never practiced disordered eating. I've never had an eating disorder. Mm-hmm. I've never had a really bad relationship with food. But when I was in fitness and I was teaching people how to get fit and healthy, I was presenting my body as a model of what they might want to attain, which was giant mistake number one. And I was also dealing with a lot of stuff internally, and I was talking about it, but I was dealing with a lot of stuff internally and also privately about what my goals were and how I wanted to be and how I wanted to look and what it meant about what I used to look like. And then also I had 2 babies in the course of me being a public figure and like kind of being out there with my life and dealing with those changes. And again, it was just a total lack of consideration about what impact I was having with these conversations. And by me putting forth my definition of what fit was.
Exactly. Without being really clear, like, this is my definition. And so I, as well, never had an eating disorder. Since moving to California, the last couple of years, I've had some like emotional eating stuff that has been a little tricky, but nothing that I would like go to a therapist for or seek like treatment for, you know? But, so there's so much I didn't know. And we talk about intent versus impact on the podcast a lot these days. And I think you and I both always came from this place of love and empowerment. I mean, the love and empowerment that we had access to with our level of understanding at the time, of like wanting people to not just use fitness to look a certain way, but also to feel a certain way. But because the feelings attached to those things are so intertwined, not having the awareness around the trauma that people had around their bodies or potential eating disorders or size. Like, I didn't know, literally I only learned this in the last few years. People told me, when you use numbers, that is so triggering to people who have had eating disorders, or size, like clothing size, things like measurements in general can trigger people into all kinds of things.
So today, if I'm going to a yoga class, I'll wear an old Guns N' Roses t-shirt and a pair of crop sweatpants. I've never done a fitness video in that. Like, It was always skin tight spandex, like fluorescent colored spandex. So there was a message, like I was saying, you know, fitness is how you feel. And I was telling people that your perfect size is where you are when you're, you know, moving every day and eating foods that nourish you and blah, 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 blah. But I was still showing up as this really thin woman in skin tight spandex.
Yeah. And not to mention, and I feel like you probably did a better job of this than I did. But just acknowledging that not everyone has access to healthy organic food. Like, even that is something for me, like always living in or around a city. It wasn't until I started like traveling more within the US, realizing that, first of all, economically, right, financially people can't necessarily get the higher quality things that we might be talking about, like, ooh, organic, like clean 15, dirty dozen, like eat this, don't eat that. But, you know, some people, they can't afford.
Yeah. And I want to make a note about privilege on that, because I was thinking about this very recently, because from the very beginning, you know, when I started talking about fitness and nutrition online, I was still on food stamps. So I was coming from a place of finding the healthiest foods for my family while still being in the system and also working on very, very limited finances and resources. However, it didn't stop me from one day on Facebook years ago saying something to the effect of, if you are not feeding your kids organic food, or if you're, you know, I know this is going somewhere super bad.
People who are listening, not watching, like my eyebrows just raised. That's why she was like, I know, I'm waiting for it. Keep going.
Yeah. I mean, this is bad. And you know what? I feel so ashamed of this, like really. And like, people don't say like, you shouldn't feel ashamed, because I do. And I think it's warranted. I feel a lot of shame and guilt around this. I said that if you are not feeding your kids organic food, and if you're, you know, feeding them processed foods or junk food or whatever, it's tantamount to child abuse.
Yo.
I know. And I'm calling that back right now, like so hard. And it feels terrible even saying it, because even when I was on food stamps, even when I was like growing my own food, I was growing up my own food because I had the education, the time, the backyard to do it in.
Right.
It's like things that, like, when we talk about privilege, we think about people with a lot of money or people with white skin, or there's like these, you know, privilege check boxes that we can check off. But we don't think about all of the little tiny things that support us in our day that we wouldn't necessarily call privilege, but absolutely are.
Right. So what are some of those things? Time, access, education, support,
access to technology, someone telling you, I love you, I believe in you. You know, hugs, kisses, affection. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so many basic needs that aren't being met for a lot of people every day. And I'm not talking about, you know, starving children in Africa, because that's where we always go when we're thinking about people not having basic needs.
Right.
But how many women, how many children, how many men aren't getting enough hugs in a day? And I know it sounds so cliche right now, but it's so true. You know, every single I hug my child and I feel that love, I think about like, I'm so lucky.
Listen, this is a real thing. Since I got out of my last relationship and I moved and I out to Malibu, like I don't have friends like here. I'll go days without hugs. I notice it for sure. When I am with my friends or when I'm like home with my family, I'm hugging everyone up. I'm like, y'all, I have like a backlog. I need all the hugs. Like sit next to me, make sure your leg is touching mine. It's no joke. Like it is for real.
And when you don't have that, how that breaks you down, right? At the base level, how it breaks you down and everything else. And it's like these foundational things are what everything else is built upon. Motivation, willingness to get up and live another day, like speak up, raise your voice, feel like just confidence or feel general belonging. Like all of that's built upon these foundational elements of like food, shelter, water, hugs,
connection,
and connection. If you don't have that, then how do you expect someone to do anything with any type of, you know, competency or ability? It's just, I was a jerk sometimes. I really, really was.
Me too.
I hate that.
And you know, there's part of me who thought that I was more relatable because I wasn't like a skinny mini. Mm-hmm. I mean, no matter how hard I've ever worked out in my life, like I will still always be a curvy person. But where I was not informed as I'm like doing fitness videos, even because like I taught in a gym for many years, even in gyms, you don't get a lot of overweight people or people with larger bodies and I can, you know, my mom has for the most part my whole life, she went through some stints where she had lost a bunch of weight and had a smaller body, but my mom's never been really fit or really athletic. And she's never felt comfortable enough to like go to a gym or go to a class, just super self-conscious. And so I knew that existed, but I couldn't relate because I was always fit. athletic. Like that was always my like comfort zone. Like even still, I walk into a gym and I feel like at home. Like I know what to do here. And so like the awareness of like that someone would walk in and it would be like the literal most scary, intimidating place ever. You know what I mean? Like to go all the way back to gym class growing up, I was super athletic. So I was usually one of the first 1 to 3 girls to be picked, which like there's another like bookmark, the gender conversation on things like that. But so there were just literally so many things I didn't know. And I'm out here like talking to people like I'm being helpful, which I know I was for some, but who can even imagine how many people were like feeling like shit reading my posts?
You said something interesting about how you felt you were relatable and for certain reasons. And I think that, or I know for me that because I felt relatable in certain ways, because I'm a woman of color, or because I came from a background of poverty or neglect and abuse, because I had these things that went wrong in my life and I could relate to a lot of people in my audience because of those things. Yeah. I felt like it gave me permission to do things that it absolutely did not.
Yeah.
Right.
This is an amazing point.
Yeah. So I would have very strong opinions that I would present as fact about myriad issues concerning marginalized populations, just people just in general who felt like they didn't belong. And I had no business talking about it because it was not my experience, not my experience. And you see it all the time. You'll see someone say, oh, well, I'm married to a black man, or I have black children, therefore I can talk about the experiences of black women. No, you can't do that. Or, you know, I struggle with an eating disorder, but I'm thin, so I can talk about the experiences of women who have bigger bodies and have eating disorders. No, you can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, you know, and this is where the nuance and complexity comes in for me. And I'm so glad you're making this distinction. I, for the most part, I thought I did a really good job of sticking to things that I've experienced myself without realizing that because things intersect and there is complexity and there is nuance, often the things I was speaking to, and probably still, there are things. It's almost like I need to have 17,000 disclaimers every time I say something to be like, well, if you're this, or if you're this, or if you're this, there's this. This might not relate to you. This might. And that's one of the things I try to do. I try to acknowledge as far and as wide as I can that this may or may not apply to you. Please use your own discernment. I feel like that's a start. I don't think it's enough, but you know, that's one of the in-process things I'm doing.
I speak on my own experience. I call in people when I want to talk about something that's not my experience.
Yes.
I center them and put the focus and the voice with them, not with me. Like, so I don't recount other people's experiences. That's also a big mistake that a lot of people in this space make.
Oh, thank you. I'm sure I make that mistake all the time. Literally writing that down. Keep going.
Oh, I'll just stop there. I know. And then the disclaimers. You know, I'm writing a book right now about motherhood, and it's a big topic that I've never wanted to tackle because I say all the time, I'm an expert of 5 children and I don't want to talk about anyone else's children. I only know about my relationship with them. However, I have given parenting advice on the internet, and I have talked about things that I feel are true when they were my opinions, especially in terms of like, you know, natural parenting, like breastfeeding or, you know, co-sleeping, things like that. So I have gone back over the book. It's taken me forever to write because I keep going back to everything I've written and saying, okay, what if the woman was in this situation? How would she receive this? What if she was in that situation? How would she receive it? It doesn't change the way that I share my experience, but it does change the conclusions that I draw based on my experience. So I've been doing that a lot, and I'm making, you know, in the promotion of this book, and then also in the pages of the book, I'm including stories from other women whose experiences were very different than mine, like adoptive mothers, trans women with children who are of different race than them, single mothers, lesbian mothers, like transgender mothers. Like, I'm calling everybody in because I really, really want the work to be of value in this book, and then in everything I do. It's like I want it to have value for the most amount of people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
I wasn't doing that.
That's inclusivity. That's what inclusivity actually is. And this is something that, you know, you always hear: diversity and inclusivity, diversity and inclusivity. And in my limited understanding before, it was just about like only representation,
which is diversity. So I say inclusivity over diversity every time. Well, and that should be the goal.
And also, like, listen, we're here trying to be decent. So I respect that. And I'm not trying to be like, this is more important than this. I'm trying to be like, let's do everything better. Please. All of us keep going. Yeah. Don't stop. Can't stop. Won't stop. Yeah. Get it.
Well, I think inclusivity, what that does is it avoids tokenism.
Yes.
And diversity is part of it. So inclusivity is like the umbrella over it. So diversity is like, so I need a Black woman, I need an Asian woman, right. I need a man, because we want to have that, you know, masculine voice. So it's like that. It's like kind of just pick, like, let's, you know, put the pieces of the puzzle together. Where inclusivity is like, does this speak to people? Do people feel like they belong here in this conversation?
Yeah. And also, of course, one person does not speak for an entire group of people.
Yeah, that's the other part. So don't think that you get the Black woman on your podcast and be like, check.
No, just no. And, you know, like, that's something I've been telling our audience for a while. Like, we are diversifying, we are becoming more inclusive, and it's going to be a process. It's going to, just as long as it's taken to even like build the show, to do that regularly, because I'm not willing to do that in a way that is only transactional, where it's like, oh, you're Black, come on my podcast. Oh, you're transgender, let's talk about it. You know, like, but I do want people's experiences. But like you're saying, to just be so careful to say, and this is one person's experience.
And I'm trying to think how I want to say this. And understanding by doing a practice, you're not getting it right. You need to continually be asking, am I getting this right?
Yeah.
And asking the right people. Like, did this speak to you? Did this make sense to you? Was there something I said wrong there? And just being open to being wrong. Like, please tell me I'm wrong, because that actually allows me to fix something.
Yeah. Yeah. This was a little paradoxical for me, because in a broad sweeping way, I'm really not into unsolicited advice.
Yes.
However, I have solicited the advice and the feedback of this audience on these types of things. I'm like, always tell me, always email us. We want to know. You don't have to educate us for free, but just like, let us know. Like, people will ping us here and there for certain things. So it's no longer unsolicited. I mean, you see on my Facebook or Instagram posts, sometimes I'm like, hey, if you disagree, I'm actually not interested. I don't care. Mm-hmm. Not in like a shitty way, and it's never about stuff like this that we're talking about.
It's mostly about personal experiences or your personal.
Yeah. It's like, listen, I'm going to share a story about dating right now. Please don't give me unsolicited dating advice, because I'm good. You know?
Yeah.
But
I get it a lot about body stuff, where I'm struggling or like grappling, because I don't love the word struggle, but I'm grappling with my own ideas around my changing body.
Yeah.
So I'll take a picture of myself and I'll post it on Instagram, and I'll say, you know, I'm thinking about how my body's changing, and I'm gaining weight, and I'm stretching in certain ways, and I'm sometimes okay with it and sometimes I'm not. And I'm just like telling you what's happening. But then I'll get all of those really lovely, well-meaning comments.
You're so beautiful, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And like, your body was a vessel and it made life, and therefore it is like the most wonderful thing in the body. And I'm like, I get it. Like, I love you for saying that, but I'm not asking for that. And I don't even think it's helpful in this moment. Not just, and for me, I'm fine. Like, I can just kind of put up the wall, but for other people who are reading the comments, because people do, it's not helpful for them to see that. So I think that I love what you're doing with saying, like, this is when it's appropriate. to give advice, and this is when it's not. And that's why I said, ask for advice from the right people. If I'm talking about transgender issues, I'm going to, not just people who are transgender, also I will, but then people who have been working in the field, who have a lot of experience, who understand the complexities, have explored it even more maybe than someone who is living the experience. So it's a lot of work, but it's necessary.
It's a lot of work. It's super necessary. And, so with body stuff, that's also something that I've been talking about, like having a changing body. And so what's interesting, though, is our mutual friend Nisha shared this essay with me a couple weeks ago by Audre Lorde called No Hierarchy of Oppressions. And what I appreciated about reading that is sometimes my heart that is naturally geared towards inclusivity doesn't want to go, well, your experience is worse than yours, so it matters more. Mm-hmm. That's a funky space. So, for example, even though I haven't had an eating disorder, even though I've not ever had like a very large body by however people determine what that qualifies as or doesn't, I still have an experience of my body is different now, and sometimes it makes me uncomfortable or sad, or, there's things I have to process about it. So there's like the individual experiences, the collective experiences, and like everything matters, but it's sticky.
Well, comparing the depth or level of trauma in someone's experience with oppression or exclusion is unnecessary. I don't see where there's any benefit in it. It just, I mean, everyone's dealing with their stuff. And some is supported by huge entities like corporate America or our government. And that has to be, and that's something where we can all participate in breaking it down. Yeah. And then some people are dealing with stuff on levels that we can't see or that we can't necessarily help with beyond saying, like, I understand, I hear you. What can I do? Like, how can I help? Like my daughter, for instance, my oldest child, she's in college and she talks about this publicly, so I can talk about it on the podcast. She has a connective tissue disorder that is genetic that causes hypermobility and is extremely debilitating at times, where she can't walk. She has to use a wheelchair or a cane. She has a handicap placard on her car. So some days she can go out and go grocery shopping for herself, and other days she can't get out of bed. Like, it's a big deal. And even as her mother, and that was a nervous laugh, even as her mother, when she would bring me complaints or just sharing what her experience was that day, I would try to minimize it to make her feel better.
Right.
And compare it to what other people were going through.
Right.
Or I would center myself and talk about, like, well, this is what I'm dealing with today, so I can relate. And I just didn't let it just be what it was. I just didn't let it be what it was and stand alone as something that really sucks, truly and really sucks for her, that it's real, and that I appreciate that as being just that. And it's a very natural thing for people to try to relate to an experience or compare it, to try to understand it. But you don't need to do that. You just need to hear what the person is saying and believe it.
Yeah.
And understand that maybe you don't have a responsibility or a say in that, and that's okay too. And that's something that comes up a lot in conversations about race, a lot, where, I'll just say it like it is. Like, where white people will try to have a voice in the conversation or try to relate to the conversation where they don't have a place in it.
Yeah.
Right. In certain conversations. And it's like, this conversation is not for you.
Not for you. And this has been one of my favorite things. And that's okay. This has been one of my favorite things that I've really learned and taken to heart and practiced deeply now over the last year is, and at first it was hit home for me, just by way of observing, there's a lot more women openly speaking online about race in like the spirituality and self-help space these days. And just observing what happens in like the comment sections on their posts. Like, I'm not one, and so there's a couple things here. Number one is that realizing how women can often relate to how men oppress us. Women can go, oh yeah, he's mansplaining. But when someone goes, you're white-splaining, someone takes offense. But it's literally like same thing, different context. And so for me to be able to go, what are all the ways that I get irritated about men thinking or wanting to have power over me? This is what white people do to people of color without necessarily even realizing it, because it's like so ingrained in our culture and that doesn't make it okay. But like these things are happening. So that's like one part of it. The other part of it is the like what you were just saying of know your lane. Sometimes the mansplaining, sometimes the white-splaining happens because people are entering into conversations that aren't for them.
Well, okay. So, and that is, if you feel put off by someone telling you that you don't belong in this conversation, you don't have an opinion here, that feeling, that taking offense is a sign that you have lived with a certain amount of privilege.
Yes.
Because you believe that everything is for you.
Yes.
I get it. I get it, especially when it comes to being a man or being white. It's that no one has ever told you that this isn't for you, because everything's for you. Because the very definition of humanity is aligned with whiteness. Yeah. Because people are white and everyone else is other. That's why people don't get described as white, like they don't have that superlative for their names, like, you know, a white man or white woman or whatever, but they're just a woman or a man. But you always qualify when someone is Black, Latino, whatever, gay, because that's other than human. Yeah. I get that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, so you're mixed race, I'm mixed race. Growing up though, like we did call people white. But I don't think I learned this from my family. I think I actually learned it from comedy. I think I did. I'm like having a moment of realizing when and why did I start referring to people as, oh, this white dude or that white guy over there. Like hashtag shit white people do. I think it came from comedy, and it came from realizing that like white people do act in really ridiculous ways. So it was like I realized that there was something different going on, but not at any kind of level of like problematic that now I see and understand. I first took it in as like something to be made fun of.
Yeah. But, you know, my awareness of it came from when my mother, who was a white woman who really wanted to be a good white woman, like she craved that approval from her Black friends and from other white people for them to say like, you're doing the right thing. But she would always, when she would tell a story, she would say, this wonderful Black man was blah, 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 blah. So she would say something like that. I'd be like, and I remember being like 10 years old, I'd be like, Mom, why has he got to be Black? Why did you have to tell me that he was Black? Because she wanted those points, and she really wanted to prove how much she loved Black people and how like they were people too. But she didn't understand that by saying that she was making them other than people. Yeah. Because she wouldn't do it when she was talking about a white man. So I noticed that, but then there was like this thing that went around in the early internet days, that was like things white people do, which was like this amazing list, like picking your own.
It's so funny.
Like paying to pick your own fruit.
Traveling.
And I was like, wow, it's true.
Traveling the world to take pictures with animals that have been drugged up.
But the truth of that is though, we never look to the other side, the ugly side of why that's funny. So it's funny that white people pay to pick their own fruit because other people were either enslaved to do it or oppressed in some other way to do it. To this day, it's happening. It's happening down the street from my house right now. I live in a farming community, and there are Mexican migrant workers who are picking food, picking organic food for white people to enjoy and making very little money to do it. and down the other part of my block. So one street, the one side has Mexican migrant workers who are picking food for very low pay. And right down the street from me on the other side is a very famous blueberry farm where they sell amazing pies, where people go and pay to pick their own blueberries. So this is happening right here today. And I can see that. And it's funny because it's terrible, right?
This is one of those things we warned you about. Like, we might giggle because
I'm just, it's like an incredulous, like, it's ridiculous. It's absurd. It's absurd. Okay. I'm not going to go off on a tangent, but it's absurd that people can't see it. And it's absurd that we don't have the ability to dig a little bit deeper without it being traumatic, right? Like, yes, we can see something as funny. White people watch Black comments and absorb Black culture in so many different ways, but comedy really like speaks to the truth about, politics and the way things are today. And we laugh along with them, but we don't take the time to understand why it's funny.
Yeah.
Not digging deeper, and we don't do the work because it's. And I say we. Why am I saying we? I say we because I spent a lot of my life being white passing, not by my own choice. It's that white people claim me, and then they decide, or other people decide for me, what I am.
Same.
So I spent a lot of my time enjoying white privilege, right? So I see this happening. I see people absorbing Black culture and cultures of other races and ethnicities. And then when confronted, though, with why it's funny, or confronted with a deeper conversation, it's too hard. It's traumatizing, or they feel attacked. And it's like, this is why things can't move forward.
This is why we are not decent yet. This is one of the things, this was one of the number one things that actually started to bring this to my attention. Just like something in my body started to feel like, this isn't for me. Around, like, I've always been a real fan and appreciator and consumer of Black culture, hip hop and R&B music. Growing up, I grew up on Staten Island with all of the people. I went to school with all of the people. And so, like, the culture, like, I would see it. There was something that always felt more like soulful to me about non-white cultures. And I don't even know if I don't even like that saying non-white, because again, that kind of others everything, but I am intentionally saying basically everything but white cultures, and even me, like with my family being Italian, that to me felt more, for lack of a better term, flavorful than some of my friends who might have other different types of white families. Like, I don't know, like,
I'm going to send you a link to something that I want you to put in the notes of this podcast. Okay. And it's a video from a very old documentary, like early 90s documentary. That's men. It's a group of men of different races together in a room having conversations like this. And it's going to say it so much better. And I think people are going to get it, about this idea of white being equal to being human, American, for people who are watching in America, America being the standard of like what is right in the world. So they talk through this conversation, and they talk about the idea of, and a Black Latino man was talking about the idea of becoming American or claiming whiteness. And in order to do that, you actually have to give up who you are. You have to give up your history. You have to give up your culture. You have to say, none of this belongs, because I need to become something different, something sterile, something uniform.
Sterile is the word. So when I say more flavorful, like more like soulful, like that, those are just like my words. It's like how I experience things, like the way people would dance, the way people could express themselves, that seems so much more natural. Like when I was learning how to salsa dance, my salsa instructor's girlfriend was Dominican, and literally had just been like dancing in her house since she was 3 years old. And the way she moved, and the way it seemed, just like the way that was just so natural, like the way I was naturally athletic was the way she was like naturally in her body and dancing. And it was so pronounced to me because I was so clunky with dancing, because I had to learn how to do it in my mid-20s. Like I was used to such more like linear movements between working out and sports and things like that. Nothing about it felt natural to me. And I was so like in my heart, like my heart would ache, because there was something so beautiful and expressive and like freeing about that. And that's the way I would often feel when I would like observe or take in other cultures. Like when I'm just going to say it the way it is for me, like when Black women sing, like I get goosebumps and I want to cry. And there are women who are not Black with amazing voices, but there's just always been like a way that I have been struck. And it's so, this is like uncomfortable stuff to say because someone might be like, I shouldn't say that. And that's okay. Like if I shouldn't say it, please tell me, because there's still a million things I shouldn't be saying that I don't know.
You know what? There is a fetishization of, and we'll say Black women because you said Black women, of Black women in American culture specifically, where white women will look at Black women and be like, they're so soulful, they're so connected, they're so spiritual, they're so powerful, they're so strong, right? Like they're these strong women that are fierce, they're queens. But what you're not appreciating is why they're like that today.
Yeah, yeah.
Is like they are strong because they've been beaten down for hundreds of years. They have suffered so much and continue to suffer today. That's where that strength comes from. It comes from trauma. So you want to take in their culture. You want to absorb it. You want to like mimic it. But do you want to suffer like it?
Exactly.
Do you want that legacy, that generation after generation of rape, torture, murder, your children being stolen from you, your identity being stolen from you? Do you want that too? And that's where the wholeness of education is so important. So of course it's okay to appreciate other cultures and push them forward and center them in your lives and share them with other people. But you need to understand the history and be connected to what made it so. So going back to the whole whiteness thing, first of all, white isn't even a thing.
Right.
It just isn't. And my children have asked me, especially as I'm going through anti-racism training, and it's become a more pronounced conversation in our house than it was before, really talking about it. And one of my teenagers just asked, Mom, so what does it mean? You hate white people? And I'm like, of course I don't hate white people. That's ridiculous. But I do hate whiteness because I've never seen anything good come out of it.
Right.
Because whiteness as a thing has only been used for bad things.
Right.
There's no culture of it. There's nothing good that's come out of it. Lots of good has come out of white people, but whiteness, no. So I am anti-whiteness, and I do reject it as a thing. And I want people to appreciate what I'm saying when I say that, because whiteness is sterilization. It's othering every single thing that isn't white. And it's oppression. It's theft.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's objectification.
And I appreciate I was talking to someone else about fetishization earlier this week or last week or something as well, around the same thing, because, and that's the part, that's where that feeling of this isn't for me begins to came up. And the first time I really felt it was actually when Beyonce's Lemonade came out. I stopped watching it 15 minutes and I was like, this isn't for me. Not like, as in I don't like it. It's not for me like that. I was just like, I don't think this was made for me. And so like there is like, I feel like I've had this internal barometer for like cultural appreciation versus appropriation. Right.
And I'll tell you, as a biracial woman, my father was Black, but I was raised in a white family. So that's where there's complexity to that. So I was raised in a certain level of whiteness. But when I watch things like that, or when I walk into a room, I went to an anti-racism training where it was half the room were Black women, half the room were white women. And I walked in with a tremendous anxiety of, where do I belong in this? Mm-hmm. And thank God for my Black sisters were like, you belong over here. And they pulled me in. And I have never felt so welcomed and at home. And it was the most healing experience of my entire life, like the most singular healing experience. But I feel that. And it became very apparent to me over the 2 days in the workshop and hearing the white women speak about their experiences with Black women and their fetishization of Black women and their appreciation of Black women, that it has created a divide among Black women that isn't our fault, that isn't something that we wanted or asked for. This acceptability of, like, Beyonce.
Right.
Beyonce, who is a lighter skinned,
Yeah.
you know, her hair is blown out. She has the extensions in, all of that. Like, look at this safe white woman
Right.
that we love so much, or light woman that we can, that mimics our whiteness. And in our experience, we can bring her in, we pull her forward, and then we push away the Black woman with the message that feels like it doesn't include us.
Right.
And that, like, Black women aren't doing that to ourselves. That's not what's happening. It's really this society, white society, putting us in boxes of acceptability or non-acceptability.
Yeah.
And that's why Lemonade was so important to white women, for white women, because it was like, oh no, I don't belong to you. And that's why Beyonce affirming and reaffirming her Blackness again and again and again is so important, because white people thought she belonged to them. They really did.
I can't.
She's like, oh.
The ownership thing, the ownership and entitlement piece of all of this is one of the things that does baffle me the most.
Well, it's the legacy of slavery. It shouldn't baffle you. It's what it is. It's, I mean, that's
when I say baffle me, I don't mean baffles me that it happens. What I mean is, me personally just doesn't register as a thing I would think myself, you know? Like, I'm not surprised by anything anymore. And nor do I think anything is new. I think that's one of the most irritating things also, when people are acting like this shit is new. I also think that's offensive.
Or that it's over. It's not really happening.
And listen, I'll admit to this, because when I was young, some of the books that I also loved the most, because I was interested in the history of things, were about the civil rights movement, or things set in that time period. And I remember wondering, like, what I would have done if I was alive during the civil rights movement. And I actually saw a meme recently that was like, if you've ever wondered what you would have done during the civil rights movement, you're doing it right now. And I was like, damn! Yeah.
If I can tell you just a bit of, like, super raw truth right now, because I'm turning 40 tomorrow.
Yeah.
As we're recording this, tomorrow's my 40th birthday, and I really want to, like, let go of a lot of stuff before that happens. Because I love ceremony and symbolism.
Please consider this a cauldron for you.
Right now, what I'm dealing with is a tremendous amount of heartbreak around people who I loved very much and cared about very much, and who I considered to be allies to me personally, like my people, not participating at all in stuff that I feel is not only important for marginalized populations, but for the future of this human race, of our democracy, of this world. And I just sit there and I'm like, how can you be saying nothing? Nothing. And that meme that you just mentioned, like, you know, what would you be doing now? Like, do I believe that 99% of the white women that I called girlfriends, that I featured on my platform over the years, would be in slavery times out on the streets protesting and advocating for the abolishment of slavery? No, because I see now that they're not doing anything to put their necks on the line. They couldn't even put a Black Lives Matter hashtag for fear that they would lose their audience or lose business. And it's like, so yeah, I'm looking at these women now, and it's like, yes, slavery in that particular form is over. Yes, the civil rights movement in that, you know, that section of history is over. But if I place them in any one of those times, I know they wouldn't be fighting for me. I know that. And my Blackness comes from a white slave owner named Thomas Boyer from Virginia, raping, because there's no other word for it. There's no way a white man could have an equal relationship, an equal and balanced relationship with a Black woman in that time, raping one of his slaves, having children by them, and then setting them free in his will. That's how it happened. So my biological father has the last name Boyer. I'm going to trace those roots all the way back. So I picture myself in that time as being one of the light-skinned slaves that would have been in the house, the light-skinned slaves that would have been raped first, that would have been favored and watched over by the woman of the house, the woman of the plantation, the white woman of the plantation. And then I look at my girlfriends and I see them as that woman married to that man on the plantation saying, I'm just the woman of the house and he's the man and he makes the decisions and I'm just doing what I got to do. And I don't agree with it, but what am I supposed to do? I'm sorry. That's where I see them. And it breaks my heart. And I can't see them in any other way because I see what they're doing now.
And that too brings me back to that no hierarchy of oppressions, because the conditioning for those women, like their survival at that time revolved around depending on a man. Like their rights were more limited then, obviously, than they are now. I'm not excusing it. I'm just saying all the layers, there's just this is why we're not decent yet. Because all the layers of the conditioning that got handed down and handed down and handed down, like so many mechanisms for survival meant you had to like not be a decent person.
Yeah. It's interesting because, I see, we see Black boys, children being shot by police in cities other than ours, in neighborhoods other than ours. So we're not directly complicit, right? But we can easily say like, I got my own stuff, but the truth is I don't want to get involved in that because I didn't want it to look messy. I don't want things to get messy for me. And it's just unacceptable to me. It is. I think that you can deal with your own stuff. I
agree.
And be an ally. Like, I think there's enough space in the day.
I'm with you.
So yeah, I'm really struggling with it right now. I'm really struggling with like who I can even be around personally.
Yep. I have, we've talked about this offline as well. And again, if you look at, there's a part of me that was like, do I just delete the first year and a half of the podcast? Because honestly, like some of those conversations, are there great nuggets of wisdom? Sure. But is it like so couched in so much like privilege and whiteness and lightness and all the things that now I'm realizing are far more problematic than I ever would have imagined? Yeah. And so this is why we talk about these things now. And so what I love about this conversation is I feel like we didn't even put a dent in it.
I know. I looked at the time and I know,
but I'm used to that at this point. Like that's when. And that's what, I forget who was the person who said this on the show, but like this is a lifelong commitment. Like we're not going anywhere because we're here to do our work. We're not going to stop doing our work at any point. And there's just like an unlimited amount of work to do because it's so, like you were just saying, it's so entrenched. There's so many layers. There's complexity. There's nuance. There's depth. There's trauma. Like there's so many components to it.
And it's a conscious recommitment, right? Every single day, it's
every day.
What can I do today? Like part of my practice is doing something that aligns with how I want to be first thing in the morning because my stuff will get in the way.
Yes.
So
every single day. And that's the thing. And that is progress. So I'll be super honest. When I really committed to this last year, it was probably around this time last year, maybe a month or two sooner than this. I did not have the resiliency to do something every single day. And my privilege allowed me not to. But at this point, I'll take general self-care anyway, which everyone should be doing here and there. I don't need to tune out anymore.
Yeah, I'll say I want to speak to that though for just one moment because there is a lot of talk about that, like taking a break and take care of yourself, and I say it with that tone because that's almost like my attitude towards it at this point. Because just Black women, just bringing Black women back into it, they don't get a break. They don't get a break. They don't get a time out from their skin color, and that's and when you admire their strength and the way they present themselves as queens of this world and so powerful, you don't think that every day they don't feel like breaking down or hiding or putting it away, and they cannot. So it is hard. It feels sucky to be putting yourself out there for criticism and all those things. But I don't think this is a time for taking a break or a rest. I think that we need to be putting maximum effort until it hurts. And I really do believe that. I think that a certain amount of pain, even like I say it in childbirth all the time, pain is, can be managed. Suffering is unacceptable, but I really don't see any of my homegirls suffering. I just see them feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So work through that.
I agree with you. I guess I just want to be super clear. Like, so for example, I'm thinking of Patrisse Cullors, the founder of Black Lives Matter. Like when I see on Instagram, like on her birthday that she took like 2 days off, like that's what I mean. She didn't take 2 days off from being a Black woman, but she did take 2 days off from working. But that doesn't mean like she's not like her life is her life, you know, but she still went, she made space for joy. She made space to celebrate things. So, I mean, regardless of who anyone is or what anyone is that's listening, I do believe that you stay tuned in and you stay committed, and you also get to have joy, and you also get to sleep and take care of yourself if you're ill, and take care of your family. When, like, I understand that there are things we don't get breaks from and some people don't get breaks from, but also like we do need to prioritize ourselves and our lives and our joy and our health at times.
I have a quick tip for that that's really fun.
Yes.
not to make the podcast longer, but when I feel overwhelmed by the news, and I specifically speak on anti-racism issues, and then also issues surrounding poverty that are so related to race in many, many ways. So when I feel exhausted by the bad news, and I feel exhausted by talking about Black men being shot, Black women being killed in police custody, things like that, I try to center Black joy. And I put that forward. So much of the dialogue around, for instance, Black fathers is that they're absent or that they're not in their children's lives, which is statistically untrue. And then also has a lot of aggravating factors. But I will post something or share something about Black fatherhood that's really beautiful. Mm-hmm. And I'll just caption it joy. And that's the tag for it, joy, because I want people to have also a different perspective about the things that they're confused about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just try to like make it a more wholesome and holistic point of view.
I appreciate that. So we can have like 17 more podcasts. I mean, you and I will continue our dialogue and conversations. And I love you. Like, I appreciate learning with you. I appreciate having someone to be like, hey, I feel weird about this. Is there something I'm not seeing? And like, so that's for anyone listening who is also committed to, you know, unpacking and doing better and becoming decent. Maybe that's our new hashtag, becoming decent.
Just be decent.
Just be decent.
And what I appreciate about you, and I tell you I love you all the time, and we have these text messages, is that you're never shy about saying the wrong thing. I don't feel shy about saying the wrong thing.
Yeah.
It's okay to fail. It's okay to fail publicly. Just focus on failing forward. Be wrong and listen to criticism and make yourself better from it. And no one's going to be mad at you for it. Well, some people might be mad.
Some people mad at you, but listen. But I think the key is the thing you said earlier. Just like stop centering ourselves. Like it's not about me. This shit's not about me. I'm doing my work so I could be decent. It is not about like, I don't need to be right. I don't need someone to speak to me in a certain tone for me. Like I can listen. I had we are going a little bit over, but it's okay. I had a debate with a white male friend of mine the other week where I was becoming livid because he couldn't hear. He wasn't listening. And I was like, this is where I've realized where this person's current ceiling on their level of understanding is. And I'm not writing that person off. Mm-hmm. But like his argument was like, we should all be more civil. And I'm like, he was saying how like the left eats itself. And I'm like, but if I'm doing my own work, I don't need someone to share however they feel or whatever they think with me in a kind or nice way so that I can receive it. I can receive because I'm listening and because I'm here and I'm committed. I don't need your ass to like be polite about it. Just tell me what the hell I need to hear.
Yeah. Tone policing is a problem.
It's a problem. Look it up if you don't know what that is as we're winding down on the interview. But
yeah. And also in that, you know, my advice always too is, and a lot of white people who are just getting into this space, and it could be about racism, it could be about ableism, you know, white privilege spans a lot of different isms, getting into this space, spend less time arguing with people who have like across the spectrum, opposing points of view, and more time helping, being in partnership with, learning with people who want to go where you want to go.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I mean, it's not like I don't think people can change. Everyone has the capacity, but like, that's not where I'm spending my energy. I really just want to rally the troops and get everybody excited about doing good, being decent.
Yeah. I read somewhere, and I'll end with this thought. Someone was saying, like, for the people with like the good hearts that are doing the work, that are here to like listen and change and improve. Like, that's who I'm talking to. Like, why am I going to go to the straight up opposition, cold hearted people who don't give a shit? Like, that's no progress is going to be happening there. So, some like form of grace, I think, is the only thing that's going to like get those people to like lift an eyebrow or open an ear and be like, huh? It's not going to be me arguing with them on effing Facebook. That's for damn sure. So send me that link to the thing in the show notes for that conversation. This will, as always, we'll put everything in the show notes. Anything we talked about, anything that we referenced during the interview, we do that all the time. If you want more Bex in your life, follow Bex Life on Instagram, BEXLIFE. The website is also BexLife.com. But I do like Instagram is really where I'm like getting where I love to follow everyone, and pretty much everything you post on Facebook, you post on Instagram too, right?
Yeah. Cool. Instagram's the place.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm so curious to see what we messed up, what emails we might get. But, everything. None of this was right. Hopefully some of it wasn't the worst. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Thanks for listening. What a weird way to end an interview. It's fine.
We probably sucked. We're probably assholes.
But we're not.
But just tell us if we are.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still recording, by the way. This is all going in. Goodbye, everyone. We love you. We mean it. Bye.
Well, my origin story is the first time I organized, it was as a gangbanger. I was the first white girl in the Rollin' 30 Crips, which is a black gang in, throughout LA, mostly West Coast. Have you heard about the Crips and the Bloods?
Yep.
So when I was 16, the boy I fell in love with was a co-founder of the Crips. And that's where I did my first organizing. And the organizing was around ensuring that my friends could eat. And it was a simple thing. In Denver, Colorado at the time, it's when crack cocaine hit the streets. And so what was happening is that there was a community that was addicted to drugs, and the people that were impacted were my friends. And the only access we had as teenagers was, okay, so my friend doesn't have food. How are we going to get food? We don't have any money. So that was my first organizing. And then shortly after that was around graffiti and how do we organize a crew to put messages on the wall that says we are here and we're not going to be quiet. And then I went into Universal Zulu Nation, which is a hip hop organization, the longest standing hip hop organization that exists. And I was rocking as a Zulu queen. And that was about organizing young people to really get in touch with their power through the mission of hip hop culture, which is to uplift and inspire.